There's a creature lurking in the deepest parts of our oceans, with a mouth so massive it looks like someone stretched a balloon over a fish skeleton. And here's the kicker. It can swallow prey larger than its own body. Not slightly larger. We're talking about gulping down animals that have no business fitting inside something that size. Sounds impossible, right? Well, the gulper eel didn't get the memo about physics. Keep watching. Because what this thing does to survive in the abyss is equal parts fascinating and absolutely nightmare-inducing. Most people picture eels as those snake-like fish hiding in coral reefs or maybe swimming up rivers. Sleek, elegant, kind of pretty in an unsettling way. The gulper eel took that design, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash. This thing looks like nature's rough draft that somehow made it to the final version. It's also called the pelican eel, and once you see it, the name makes perfect sense. That mouth, it unhinges like a pelican's pouch, except instead of scooping fish from the surface, it's swallowing them whole in complete darkness 3,000 feet below the waves. We're talking about an animal that lives where sunlight has never reached, where the pressure would crush you like a soda can under a hydraulic press, where the temperature hovers just above freezing, and your only neighbors are creatures that look like rejected concept art from a horror movie. And in this pitch-black void, the gulper eel isn't just surviving. It's thriving, using one of the most bizarre feeding strategies evolution has ever cooked up. Let's start with the basics, because this fish breaks so many rules it's hard to know where to begin. The gulper eel can grow up to 3 feet long, though some reports suggest they might reach 6 feet. That's bigger than most dogs. But here's the thing. Most of that length is tail, a long whip-like tail that tapers to almost nothing. The business end, the part that matters, is that absolutely ridiculous mouth. This eel looks reasonably normal. Well, as normal as a deep-sea creature can look. But when it opens that mouth, everything changes. The jaw unhinges like a snake's, except this is on a completely different level. A snake's mouth might open to about 150 degrees. The gulper eel? It can open its mouth wide enough to create a cavity larger than its entire body. Imagine if you could unhinge your jaw and create a space the size of a refrigerator. That's essentially what this eel is working with, proportionally speaking. The lower jaw swings down and out, and the membrane connecting it stretches like rubber. Not metaphorically like rubber. It literally has the properties of rubber. Elastic, flexible, capable of expanding to absolutely bonkers proportions. And here's where it gets wild. That massive mouth isn't lined with terrifying teeth. You'd expect some deep-sea horror show of fangs and daggers, right? Nope. The gulper eel has tiny teeth, practically useless teeth. Because it doesn't need to bite. It doesn't need to tear. It just needs to open up and swallow. The entire feeding strategy is built around being a living net. A biological trawler cruising through the deep ocean, scooping up anything unfortunate enough to swim into range. But why? Why evolve such a bizarre feeding mechanism? Simple. Food is ridiculously scarce in the deep ocean. We're not talking about a little bit scarce. We're talking about a nutritional desert that makes the actual Sahara Desert look like a buffet. Only about 5% of the food produced at the ocean's surface makes it down to the depths where the gulper eel lives. Everything else gets eaten on the way down. The deep ocean is basically living on scraps, on leftovers from the world above. You can't afford to be picky. Most predators in the deep have evolved to be ultra-efficient hunters. They've got bioluminescent lures, hypersensitive lateral lines, electroreception. They've turned hunting into a precise science because every calorie counts. Miss your shot, and you might not eat again for weeks. The gulper eel said, forget precision, forget targeted strikes. Just make your mouth so absurdly large that you increase your odds of catching something, anything, by sheer volume. It's the underwater equivalent of replacing a fishing rod with a giant net and just dragging it through the water hoping something gets caught. And you know what? It works. Because the gulper eel isn't competing with barracudas or tuna or any of those speed demon predators from the shallow waters. Down in the abyss, the competition is completely different. It's not about who's fastest or strongest. It's about who can survive the longest between meals, who can make the most of every opportunity. And a mouth that can swallow animals larger than yourself? That's a pretty good opportunity maximizer. Let's talk about that stomach for a second. Because the mouth is only half the story. The gulper eel's stomach is equally ridiculous. It can stretch and expand to accommodate prey that, logically, should not fit. Imagine swallowing a basketball, not biting it, not breaking it down, just opening your mouth and somehow fitting the entire thing inside your body. That's essentially what this eel can do. The stomach walls are incredibly elastic, capable of expanding to several times their normal size. It stays in there, sometimes for weeks. Because here's the thing about the deep ocean. You don't know when your next meal is coming. Could be tomorrow, could be next month. So when you do catch something, you need to make it last. The gulper eel's digestive system works incredibly slowly, extracting every possible nutrient from its prey. Nothing goes to waste. Can't afford waste when you're living in the most resource-starved environment on Earth. Every calorie is precious. Every meal might be your last for a very long time. Now, you might be wondering how this thing actually hunts. After all, it's pitch black down there. No sunlight has penetrated these depths for millions of years. And while the gulper eel does have eyes, they're not particularly impressive. Small, poorly developed, probably not seeing much detail. So how does a creature with terrible vision and a giant mouth actually find prey in complete darkness? It cheats, kind of. The gulper eel has a bioluminescent organ at the tip of its tail, a little glowing bulb that emits a pinkish light. And this isn't just for show. This is a lure. The eel swims with its long tail curled forward, dangling that glowing tip in front of its mouth like a fisherman with a lantern. In the absolute blackness of the deep ocean, any source of light is irresistible. Small fish, crustaceans, anything with eyes is drawn to it. They think maybe it's food, maybe it's a mate, maybe it's just something to investigate in the endless dark. And then, surprise. Mouth the size of a sleeping bag opens up and swallows them whole. It's ambush predation taken to its logical extreme. The gulper eel doesn't chase. Doesn't really need to. It just hangs in the water column, tail light glowing, mouth ready, and waits. Patience is everything down here. Rush things. Burn energy you can't afford to burn. And you die. Always. But here's where things get even more interesting. Scientists have pulled up gulper eels from the depths and found some absolutely baffling things in their stomachs. We're not just talking about small fish and shrimp. We're talking about prey items that seem impossible. Creatures with hard exoskeletons. Animals with spines. Things that should have fought back or been too big to handle. And yet there they are, perfectly preserved inside the eel's stomach, slowly being digested. One particular specimen, caught off the coast of California, had consumed a deep-sea fish nearly as long as the eel itself. Not a little smaller. Not moderately smaller, almost the same length. How does that even work? How do you swallow something that big? The gulper eel apparently figured it out. The mouth opened, the jaw unhinged, the elastic membrane stretched, and down it went. The whole process probably took a while. Probably wasn't pretty, but it happened. Because when you live where food is this scarce, you take what you can get, even if it seems physically impossible. And before you start thinking the gulper eel is some apex predator terrorizing the deep ocean, let's pump the brakes. This thing is simultaneously one of the most effective feeders in its environment, and also kind of pathetic. Yeah, it can swallow animals larger than itself. That elastic skin that makes its feeding strategy possible? It's paper thin, easily damaged. The gulper eel can't really defend itself against anything serious. If a bigger predator shows up, its only defense is to swim away, and it's not particularly fast. Plus, that massive mouth? It's a liability as much as an asset. The gulper eel can't zip through the water like a torpedo. It has to kind of lumber along mouth first, like someone trying to swim while holding a parachute. Not exactly built for speed. Not exactly built for fighting. It's specialized. Extremely specialized. And in the deep ocean, specialization is a double-edged sword. It makes you incredibly good at one thing and terrible at everything else. Scientists have been studying these creatures for decades, and we still don't know as much as we'd like. They're incredibly difficult to study in their natural habitat. You can't exactly set up a research station 3,000 feet below the surface and watch them go about their day. Most of what we know comes from specimens that have been accidentally caught in deep-sea trawling nets. And even then, they usually don't survive the journey to the surface. The pressure change is too extreme. By the time they reach the deck of a research vessel, they're often dead or dying. But even dead gulper eels tell us stories. Their stomach contents reveal what they've been eating. Their body structure tells us how they move and hunt. And the more we study them, the more we realize just how perfectly adapted they are to their environment. Every feature, every adaptation, every weird biological quirk serves a purpose. The massive mouth maximizes prey capture. The elastic stomach maximizes nutrient extraction. The bioluminescent tail lure attracts prey without expending energy on active hunting. The long, tapering body minimizes energy expenditure while swimming. It's all connected, all part of a survival strategy honed over millions of years. And it's not just the gulper eel that's evolved these strategies. The deep ocean is full of creatures with bizarre adaptations for dealing with the extreme scarcity of food. There are fish with stomachs that can expand to 10 times their normal size. Anglerfish that fuse with their mates to ensure reproduction, in a place where finding a partner is nearly impossible. Vampire squid that can survive on marine snow. The constant rain of organic debris drifting down from the sunlit zones above. Everyone down there is playing the same game. Survive as long as possible between meals. Make every calorie count. Don't waste energy on anything unnecessary. The gulper eel just happens to be particularly good at this game. Its entire body is basically a calorie conservation machine. Its metabolism slows to a crawl. Heart rate drops. Movement becomes minimal. It enters a state that's almost like hibernation, waiting for the next opportunity to feed. And when that opportunity comes, when something triggers that feeding response, it strikes. Mouth opens, prey disappears, and the eel goes back to waiting. Rinse and repeat. That's life in the abyss. Now you might be wondering what happens when a gulper eel swallows something truly massive. Like, what if it overestimates? What if it tries to swallow something that's just too big, even for its ridiculous mouth? Well, sometimes that happens, and it's not pretty. There have been cases of gulper eels found dead with prey lodged in their throats. They bit off more than they could swallow, and it killed them, which is a pretty brutal way to go when you think about it. Starving to death because you were too ambitious with your last meal. But that's the risk you take when your entire survival strategy is built around maximizing every feeding opportunity. Most of the time, it works. The eel swallows something big, gets a huge nutritional boost, and survives for another few weeks or months. But occasionally, rarely, it doesn't work. And natural selection doesn't really care about the occasional failure. It only cares about the average success rate. And on average, the gulper eel's strategy works. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be around. Here's something else that's fascinating. The gulper eel's eyes, despite being small and poorly developed, are actually positioned in an interesting way. They're not on the sides of the head like most fish. They're more forward-facing, almost binocular. This suggests that at some point in their evolutionary history, gulper eels might have relied more on vision. Maybe they lived in shallower waters where there was still a bit of light. And as they adapted to deeper and deeper environments, their eyes became less important. But the positioning remained. A vestigial feature from a time when things were different. Evolution doesn't always erase old features completely. Sometimes it just reduces them, makes them less prominent. And the gulper eel's eyes are a perfect example. They're still there, still functional to some degree, but they're not the primary sensory organ anymore. That role has been taken over by other systems. Lateral line detection for sensing vibrations in the water. Chemoreception for detecting chemical signatures of prey. That bioluminescent lure for attracting prey directly to the mouth. It's worth mentioning that the gulper eel isn't the only deep-sea creature with a disproportionately large mouth. There are several other species that have evolved similar strategies. The black swallower, for instance, can consume prey up to twice its own length. The viperfish has teeth so long it can't fully close its mouth. The stoplight loosejaw has a hinged jaw that extends forward like something out of Alien. Deep-sea predators have basically looked at conventional hunting strategies and said, yeah, that's not going to work down here. We need something weirder. And they're right. Conventional strategies don't work in the deep ocean. The environment is too extreme, too hostile, too devoid of resources. You have to be creative. You have to be efficient. And sometimes, being efficient means looking absolutely ridiculous. The gulper eel doesn't care that it looks like a cartoon character drawn by someone who forgot what fish look like. It cares about surviving, and its bizarre appearance is precisely what allows it to do that. One more thing that makes the gulper eel particularly interesting is its place in the larger deep-sea ecosystem. It's not a top predator, not even close. There are much bigger, much scarier things down there, but it occupies an important niche. It feeds on mid-sized prey that might be too small for larger predators to bother with but too large for smaller predators to handle. It's a mid-tier predator, which means it helps regulate populations of its prey species and provides food for its own predators. It's a link in the chain. Not the biggest link, but an important one. And when a gulper eel dies, its body doesn't go to waste. In the deep ocean, nothing goes to waste. Its carcass sinks to the seafloor and becomes a food source for scavengers, hagfish, deep-sea crabs, amphipods, bacteria. They all show up for the feast. A single dead gulper eel can sustain a small community of scavengers for weeks or even months. In an environment where food is desperately scarce, every dead animal is a bonanza, a temporary oasis in the nutritional desert. Scientists estimate that there are probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of gulper eels in the world's oceans. But we've only seen a tiny fraction of them. The deep ocean is enormous. We've explored less than 5% of it. There could be entire populations of gulper eels living in areas we've never even surveyed. Different subspecies adapted to slightly different conditions. Variations we've never documented. The deep ocean is the last great frontier on Earth. And creatures like the gulper eel remind us just how little we actually know about our own planet. Every time we send a submersible down there, every time we drag a net through the abyss, we find something new, something unexpected, something that challenges our assumptions about what's possible. And the gulper eel, with its impossible mouth and elastic stomach and ridiculous survival strategy, is a perfect example. It shouldn't work. By all conventional logic, an eel with a mouth bigger than its body shouldn't be able to function. But it does, because nature doesn't care about our logic. Nature cares about results, and the gulper eel gets results. So the next time you're standing at the beach, looking out at the ocean, remember that beneath those waves is a world we barely understand. A world where the rules are different, where pressure and darkness and scarcity have shaped life into forms that seem impossible. Where an eel can swallow animals larger than itself and call it just another Tuesday. The gulper eel is out there right now, thousands of feet below, mouth open wide, tail light glowing, waiting patiently for its next meal, doing what it's been doing for millions of years. Being effective, and being absolutely fascinating.